Hey, this is Karen, Coach's Corner Chats, and joining me is Mike Carroll. Mike, where are you at and what are you up to?
Houston, Texas. Well, Houston area, Katy. We're at West Houston. Right now, we are the club that I work for, SG1 Soccer Club, is in our summer training programs, which is the majority of it is technical training because we don't do a lot of that during the seasons. We're mostly built around positional play training and the cognitive aspects of player development. But in the off seasons, we do a lot more technical work just to make sure the kids are getting their touches in. And practices are voluntary, right? A lot of kids are on vacation and whatnot. So yeah, we're just in our summer sessions right now.
At SG1 Soccer, what are the kind of age groups that you all deal with?
We run the full gamut, boy side, girl side, U5, I guess, to all the way up to graduation of high school. So like we have 2006 would be our oldest group now, and most of those are seniors or going to be seniors.
And how long have you been with the club? And then what is your actual job? Like, what's your role and responsibility?
I've been with the club just shy of 3 years now. And my title, we can go that route, is Director of Player Development. It's kind of a unique title, not a lot of those around. But basically, my job is to help train coaches, new coaches, young coaches. That's a big portion. Work with them, guide them through their development, and then also I'm kind of like what a technical director would be, but specifically for like U10 and below. I've designed our training methodology, our playing methodology, and the way we communicate, all of those things. The what we call the Rising Stars program, which is basically I don't want to call it a rec program because it has, full USSF licensed coaches running it. But it's our youngest, least experienced groups. I designed that and continue to tweak and develop everything that we have at the youngest age groups. So I've kind of got my hands in a lot of different areas of the club, I guess you could say.
One of the things you mentioned first was coaching the coaches. Why is that so important for you to do? A lot of places, it's just like, oh, we found a parent to do it and we'll just let them go.
Yeah. So one of the things that we pride ourselves on is our culture. And I know that's kind of a buzzword for a lot of places. It's kind of all encompassing for a lot of people. But for us, it's like, the way you treat other people. It's our core values. It's our behaviors, our relationships, and your beliefs. And that has to be passed along. It has to be taught. Not everybody may have that in them. And we want all of our coaches to be on the same page, utilizing the same training techniques and methodologies and terminologies. And so in order for that to happen, I didn't want our club to be a collection of coaches each doing their own thing. I wanted everybody to be in sync, in line, know each other, which is a big deal. I'm surprised at how many clubs coaches just don't know each other. And it's crazy to me that, oh, I've been here 4 years. No way, I've been here 6 years. How have we never met? I don't know. And so it's insane to me that exists. But we're not a massive club by any means. So I want everybody to be on the same page and all working towards a common goal, thinking the same way, having the same thought processes. And the only way that happens is if there's somebody there to pull it all together for them, right? There has to be there has to be a common leadership there in order to make sure everything is in sync.
So let's go all the way back. When
Sure.
did soccer become something in your life? Were you playing as a youth? Were you in a club growing up? How did this whole how did the soccer journey start for you?
So I started at age 3. I started playing when I was really, really young. I was very fortunate. And so we're talking 1976, 1977 here. I'm way old, right? And so, um, believe it or not, it was my mother, and because my mother was a player, and my uncle, her brother, played. He played in college at Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls, Texas, and I had a lot of really good influences in my life for the sport itself at the time. And one of the things that I preach to the parents that we have now is the one thing that my mother always let me do, which was take a ball anywhere I wanted to go. Right? Just let me have it with me. Didn't matter if it was in the grocery store or in a park or in the house. Right? I took a ball everywhere with me, and I loved the ball. And it really, when you grow to love the ball, and then obviously the ball is part of the game, and so it becomes, you get good relatively quick, and being good is fun. And so it's it just, you stick with it. And I did my whole life. I've never been away from the game. I played all the way up into college. And then I played in the United States Navy when I joined the Navy, and that was where I started coaching at a local YMCA in Bremerton, Washington, in 1997. And so I took on a volunteer role there, and I've been coaching ever since.
What was the experience going through at the Navy and what have you, in terms of what thing did you pick up there that now have kind of helped you, not just in soccer and coaching, but in life?
Well, with the Navy, I joined the Navy because I wasn't very good at life. I'm going to be honest with you. When I was 18, 19, right? I was not good at it, right? And so like take my college career, which was very, very short-lived, right? It's apparently you still have to go to class. You can't just show up for practice. So it's I was not good at those things. I was somewhat, I hated school. I didn't want to be in school. My mom was trying to force me into some form of school. And that was why I joined the Navy, is because I didn't want to go to school. And I was really, really bad. But it ended up being one of the most fortunate moves of my life, right? Because I grew up a lot. I learned leadership, which was a big one. Being a proper leader and knowing how to lead is a whole skill in itself, right? And so that able to take that into my coaching career, right, was huge for me. And so now I was ill prepared to handle 4, 5, and 6-year-olds at age 22, right? But I did. The only reason I started coaching, to be honest with you, was because we had pulled into port. My ship that I was attached to had pulled into port in Bremerton, Washington, which is just outside Seattle at the time. And I loved being there, by the way. There was no better place to be in the world in the mid-90s than on the West Coast. It was amazing. In Seattle, the grunge era, I was completely into. So it was fantastic for me, right? And I started coaching. I started coaching because I was told that we were going to be in that port for a while, and we needed to go out and volunteer in the community, right? And go do something, because you're going to be here a while. We want you to go do something, be part of the community. And there was a list. The leadership gave us a list of places we could like volunteer at, and the YMCA was on the list. And so I went to the YMCA and said, "Hey, I'm here to help volunteer and whatnot." And they were like, "What can you do?" And I go, not very many things. But I play a little soccer, and they go, good, we need coaches. Here's a bunch of 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. Go have fun. Right now, I had never had a coaching class. I'd never coached before. And so I kind of leaned on my own experience as a player and the coaches who I had in the past, which is not the way to handle 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. It's when you've been playing at higher levels for a long time, you can't be out there like, go do this and go do that and run. A bunch of 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. And I was not good. I was not good when I started. And which is one of the reasons why I like working with young coaches now, because I want to be the mentor that I didn't get to have. Right. And so we have 20 and 21-year-old coaches. We have 19-year-old volunteers, right, that are high school players for us, 18 and 19-year-old volunteers that and they work with the younger kids. And man, I wish I had a me when I was their age, right? And they have such a massive advantage being in a club that values coaching development and growing from within, right? And so it's a big deal. Like 6 of our coaches are now we're former players. 6 of the closest coaches we have now are former players from our club. And they're 19, they're 20, they're 21, or a couple of them have gone off to college. They played in college and now they've come back, and now they're back with the club they came up with as coaches. And I'm working with them on learning to communicate with young players and how to engage them and maximize their development and help them to want to follow you as a coach. Because you can't force a player to follow you. They have to want to follow you. And it's your job to light that fire in them, right? And so that's kind of, I basically just explained another part of my role in a nutshell. So yeah, so when I was not good when I first started coaching, but I loved it. I fell in love with coaching, and I knew that my playing career wasn't going to go much further, right? I was playing for the Navy. So it had pretty much come to a screeching halt. And I was like, well, I can do this. I can stay in the game. And so that was basically when I decided to start coaching. And I've been coaching in some capacity ever since, whether it was volunteer or technical only for a little bit or what have you before I got into club soccer. But I've been in the game and coaching ever since.
When you look back, you make the comment that I wasn't good at it. How important is like self-reflection and being able to be honest with yourself? I think a lot of times we think, oh, it's really not me, it's them type of thing, that they're not developing, so it's not my fault. How big has that been for you in terms of your role as now saying, I wish I had a me that I didn't have then?
Well, we have to take ownership of our own experiences and of our own lives, right? And so that's the way you grow. That's the way you improve, recognizing that, what you need to improve upon and get better at. It's the only way that you're going to maximize who you are as a coach, as a person, all of those things, right? To understand, look, I'm not good at this, right? And if I want to be good at it, I'm going to have to work on this. Those require a certain, like you said, inner reflection, right? Self-reflection, looking yourself in the mirror and realizing, hey, look, I can be good at it, but this is what I got to get better at. This is what I've got to study. This is what I've got to work on. This is what I have to practice in order for me to get better. I think growing up in sports helps us with that. Right. If you want to get better technically, you got to work technically in your backyard. If you want to, those kinds of things. Right. So that's why I'm a big proponent of trying to get kids to play sports for as long as possible, or until they find something else that they want to challenge themselves with. It honestly doesn't have to be sports. You just have to challenge yourself and need something in your life to push you, to make you better at whatever it is you want to be at.
So you do the YMCA and you get the coaching bug. and you're ready to rock and roll. I mean, where do you go from there? Like, you're just doing that just to fill time with the Navy, but now you're like, I enjoy this. What are those next steps that you start doing to create more opportunities for yourself?
So I stayed with the Y until I got out of the Navy, right? So there was another 2 years left, and I just stayed with the YMCA until I got out of the Navy. And then I came back home, and I wanted to stay with the YMCA because I've been working with the YMCA. So I worked with the YMCA in Irving, Dallas, Texas. I played for that YMCA as a kid, and so I wanted to work there for a little bit, and so I did. And so when I moved to Houston and met my wife and we had kids, I started working with our kids, right? And so I was volunteering for a little bit there with my son, and I mean, he's almost 18 now, right? And so one day, one of the parents came up to me, actually a friend of mine, said, "Hey, you should you're getting pretty good at this. You should think about getting paid to do this." And I said, "Well, I don't know about that. Do they pay people to work with 6-year-olds?" And, and he goes, "Handsomely." And I said, "Okay." So I started looking into it, and that was when I answered an ad for Corver, right? Technical skills type training. And so I learned a lot while working with some coaches that were doing the Corver training here in Houston, the technical skills work. And then from there, I moved into a local club, and I became a club coach, and I've stayed in club ever since. And I became full-time club only about 10 years ago.
What was that experience of once you have kids, and you talked about the impact that your mom had in putting you in sports and letting you play? What was it like for you to now be pouring into your own kids? And what's that dynamic like of being dad and also coach?
Well, I'll tell you this, being dad made me a much better coach, right? Because my patience level increased dramatically when I became a dad. You can't just go around popping off all the time. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm still pretty animated as a coach, right? If you watch any video of me or anybody that comes and watches me coach, I'm animated. I'm up and I'm moving and I'm trying to communicate. I'm actually kind of loud. I'm not quiet, but I try to be positive with my vocals, right? So I'm because I'm still competitive, right? I'm competitive internally. And so I always want to be better than yesterday. I want my players to be better than they were yesterday. And so yeah, I was animated on the field when I was a player. Everything was right out there on the sleeve. The heart, the attitude, the personality. It was right out there. And I played angry, and I've gotten rid of a lot of the anger, but I'm still animated and passionate about what I do. And I'm not calm or what you would call mellow on the sidelines by any means. I'm not one of those guys who can sit in a chair all game and just right. It's not really my thing. So yeah, it's being a parent and getting involved, and I like spending the time with my kids, right? So being a parent made me a better coach, and I came along, and that was when I really started studying. I wanted to find my way at that point, right? That was about 15 years or so ago. Well, maybe more like 12 years. That was when I started studying really, really, really hard, and wanted to be really good at the job. Yeah, so yeah, about 12 years that I've really pushed myself into it hard.
When you say studying and creating kind of like your own understanding, what did that even look like?
Well, there was a lot of research done on different methodologies that were out there, from technical to positional play, phase of play. There's so many different um, schools of thought in the game, right? On how players should be developed, how players should play in their youth, how they should be brought along. And so I tried finding the best mix that I could. So it's funny when people tell me, when did you come up or how did you come up with your methodology? I just tell them, it's really just a mixture of my own personal influences, right? And arranged kind of in a progression. That's all it really is. And it's other. I didn't invent any of it. I've arranged it, but I mean in my own way that I feel like is best. But nothing we do is a secret. Nothing our club does is a secret. It's out there for everybody there's a reason I share it for free, right? And it's out there for everybody. And I'm not even saying my way is the right way. Okay. I'm not even telling it, because there's more than one way to do things. I'm saying what I do publicly is I say, look, this is what I'm doing, and these are the results I'm getting from it. Right. If you like this, then here's what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. Feel free to follow. If you don't, then don't. So I'm not saying my way is the right way or anything, because I mean, we have had some success, and our teams and our players, yes, they are quite good for their ages, right? And so it doesn't mean that. I mean, there's other coaches out there doing different things, and that's one of the reasons why I like traveling around and going to Dallas and playing against these teams from California and things like that. Those teams are good too, and some of them aren't doing a lick of the same thing I'm doing, right? And so it's interesting to see other people's way. I still consider myself to be learning all nonstop. Now, the things that I'm trying to get better at are probably different than what a lot of other coaches are trying to get better at. I'm currently doing my best to study early childhood development now, and to figure out the ways that I can best communicate with players, because I know that I've got in here, I see it. There's visions in here that I know I can get into them on the field. Just, you've got to learn to communicate it with the kids, right? Translating it. I don't expect 8-year-olds and 7-year-olds to adjust to me. You can't do that, right? I have to learn to communicate with them. I have to learn how to be better for them. And because I've seen 7, 8, 9-year-olds do incredible things in life. I have a 9-year-old, and she's crazy intelligent, right? And she can absorb whatever you throw at her. Almost every kid can. I haven't met a kid yet that couldn't eventually absorb what you were trying to give them, as long as you were able to communicate it in a manner that they can understand. So that's what I'm currently working on with myself, is becoming a better communicator and trying to study early childhood development, which, it doesn't have, a lot of people wouldn't link those two things together, being a soccer coach with that, because they're not teaching that at USSF courses.
Mm. The other thing that it seems like is there's been a constant theme of you working with youth players. What is it about that has you so hyper focused in terms of, like, maybe it's what you were just talking about, when you know that these kids can absorb like a sponge? Is it that, or what other things have always just you talked about when you started, it was a struggle back at the very beginning, and now you have this love and passion. What's that? How's that all come about?
Well, when I look at the landscape of the United States soccer, right, there's a lot of focus paid to U13 and up, from they talk about development and all those other things, which academy is doing the best job, and you see these lists of this academy is the best in the country, and this academy needs to improve and whatnot from MLS academies. And I'm like, well, the majority of the work needs to be done long before then. And so the putting the passion of the ball and the game into the kids doesn't happen at age 12. I mean, it happens at 3, 4, and 5, like it did for me, right? That's how if you want your players to be better, you've got to start at 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, right? That's when you've got to start, and you have to involve the parents, and you have to like I talk to parents nonstop. I do every year. We do parent education in our club, right? I hold a parent education meeting for our youngest, for the parents of our youngest players. And so I talk to them about allowing them to have the ball around the house and in the backyard, and encouraging them to play. And yeah, it's work to play with your kid, but because sometimes you're exhausted, right? You come home from work, you're tired and whatnot. But if that's what maximizes love, is what maximizes a player. Love for the game, love for the ball. That's what, when the ball becomes the kid's favorite toy, that's when the kid starts really developing early, right? And then they develop the technical and the technique all on their own in the backyard, in the living room, playing around with mom and dad. I don't have to do that. That's a job that makes my job so much easier. If I can get each parent to be essentially an assistant coach for me, then I don't have to do that. I can work on cognitive player development with 7-year-olds. And so, because they're already technical enough and have the technique to be able to do the things that I'm asking them to do under the types of pressure that I'm asking to do it in a positional play training, so, and then all I have to do is figure out how to teach them the game. So that's that methodology, right? That's part of that methodology. It starts out with, like a Tom Byer, soccer starts at home, right? Mm-hmm. It starts out, and I've worked with Tom on a couple of different things. And so it starts out with, that soccer starts at home, and into the Corver ball mastery, and teaching parents how to do that at home, right? And that's that Corver influence from me. And then you move into the positional play, the Tovo, right? Todd Bean's program, and rondos, and then the natural movement from there is into phase of play. And so I've kind of just found a progression to it all, and as long as our coaches, which is my job to teach them, are able to communicate it to their players, it becomes an assembly line of just player development across all age groups. And what you end up with is, we have second teams and third teams, but those teams are pretty doggone good, right? And so it becomes just now the reason that isn't done on a wider scale in the United is because it's hard work. It's a lot of hard work to do everything I'm talking about. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes education. You don't just go out there and dribble through cones, right? Which I might add, we don't do at our club. We don't even have cones on the ground to dribble through, right? So it takes a lot of hard work to do these things, a lot of thought, a lot of planning, and a lot of people don't get into the coaching industry to work hard. And I might catch some flack for saying that. You heard Kai say it last week, right? I mean, there's not a lot of very good coaches out there, is what he said. And so he's not wrong. It's a lot of hard work to be a coach the right way, and so it's our methodology in a nutshell, I guess.
With all the layers to your methodology and the amount of people that are like impacted by it, from parents to coaches, to how important was it when you went to SG1 and kind of put this out there when you first started coming in? How important has it been that leadership from the top has been open to your coming in and being like, hey, here's how I'd like to do things, and their buy-in and their support?
It's vital, absolutely vital. See, I have no interest to own a club, right? I don't want to deal with taxes and payroll and lights and mowing and all of these other things, right? There's a lot that goes into owning a club, and I have no desire to do any of that. I want to be on the field. I want my shoes in the grass, right? And so it was important when I left my previous club, which I'd been at for 6 years. It was important for me to find a place that was going to allow me to do me, right? If that makes any sense. And I kind of knew where I wanted to work. I knew I wanted to be at SG1 before I even left. I didn't even announce that I was like leaving publicly. I didn't do that. I called 2 or 3 places where I'd be willing to work with people I'd be willing to work for. I was choosing my boss. And but SG1 was always my first choice. And I told them that, look, what I'm going to ask you to do is going to be hard, right? Because it's I came out to a couple of practices before I took the position, and I watched, and SG1 was I always thought they were good at the older age groups. They were already pretty good, right, at the older age groups. But the younger age groups needed some guidance. There wasn't a lot of leadership down there and the younger age groups. And I told them, look, there's some things that I'm going to ask you guys to do, which is it's going to be hard. So for instance, the U8s were playing in like competitive leagues, and they had no business being in competitive leagues. They were not good. And the U7s, the U8s, and U9s, they were not good at all. And I said, look, what we need to do is take all of these teams, build an in-house league, pull them all in-house where we can all work with them in-house. Going out and getting beat 10-0 every single game, every single week, that's not fun for anybody, right? And you're going to have to answer a lot of questions to parents who think that competitive play against other clubs and yelling from the sidelines and having coaches screaming from the other sideline is development, is what makes players better, but it isn't. And so, and they were like, yeah, sure, whatever you need. And I'm like, all right, okay. And so I kind of turned things upside down. They were really open to whatever they didn't say no to me. To this day, I don't think I've still heard the word no. And I've asked for some really obscene, hard things, right? that where you're gonna have some questions to answer. And so I said, some people are gonna leave. That's what's gonna happen. And some people did leave, but eventually more came. And I said, it's going to be 1 or 2 steps backwards before we take 10 steps forwards. And we brought in some new coaches. We let go of a couple of coaches, right? And so there were some things that really needed to be worked on, but it was a good club already, right? And they just needed some leadership in the lower age groups. The DOC at the time was being pulled in 900 directions, and he was trying to do everything, and you can't do that, right? He was coaching teams. I didn't know DOC's out here coaching teams, and not just, that's not your job as a DOC. So, and so we brought in, like I said, some really good coaches that I knew would do a great job for us and would be able to hop right in. So what I asked them to do was hard.
So you've talked about like hard conversations, hard decisions, and kind of raising the bar. People here, how do you get coaches to buy in and do all of them to be on board and do the same methodology that you're preaching? How do you get parents to take a step back and like, look, give us some time, give us some patience? Like, we've all kind of been in that thing, but it's a hard sell. How do you get them to buy in and then stay bought in?
Yeah, it's really hard to get parents to see the big picture. I have a pretty solid reputation in the city as being a decent coach here, right? And even I have trouble getting parents to buy in, right? And so it's it's a you just kind of have to say, look, some people are going to stay and some people are going to go, but the people that stay are going to see the long-term reward and long-term benefits. um I tell this quick story about, when I brought everybody in, because my teams from my previous club they were good, right? And so I'd played against some of the parents' kids here at SG1, and so they were like, "Well, how long do you think it'll be before you get our young players playing the way you were playing over there?" And I said, "If I do a really, really good job, like if I kill it, right? Like if we knock this out of the park, 2 years, and we'll start looking the way we want to look, right?" And they looked at me like I had three heads. And so they're like, 2 years? And I'm like, yeah, this is a time consuming process. You see all these bad habits? Breaking bad habits is the hardest thing a coach has to do, because most coaches have 2 practices a week, 3 hours, maybe hour and a half of practice to try to break bad habits, right? And so it's going to take as long to break the bad habit as it took to create it. And so that's why when you look at my younger teams and you're like, how do 7 and 8-year-olds play so well? Well, I've had them for 3 years now, 4 years, and we didn't build the bad habits into them from the beginning. We know what we don't want to build into players. We know the habits we don't want players to have, so we just don't put those in them. It's the reason we don't use cones. I don't want players learning to look down. And if you put a cone on the ground, now you got the object that you're trying to get around is down next to your feet. And so it's the reason I don't use cones. I've done everything that we're doing is designed to keep players from developing the bad habits and to teach them the game. And so it's not saying that cones don't have their use. I still use them to like mark the outline of a grid or whatnot, right? But we don't use them as objects. And so that's just one example. The whole system is built around those types of ideas. And so when you're trying to overcome, like the U11s and U12s and U13s, those were the hardest teams to take over, right? Those because they had 5 and 6 years of bad habits. And so it takes a long time for coaches to come through and say, our kids won't start looking at their feet. They won't stop, they won't make good decisions. They try to dribble against 3 and 4 other players, right? When they obviously have better plays. Breaking all of those bad habits is something is hard to do. So at the younger age groups, we just don't build bad habits into them. And so that's part of the methodology and the progressions that we do.
You mentioned earlier about putting stuff out video wise and sharing and what have you. How has social media for you personally kind of changed how you, not just your coaching, but now the ability to get your beyond just SG1? Now it can be out there for a larger audience.
Yeah, and that's kind of the purpose of it. I don't need anybody to recognize our club or me or our coaches or anything like that. I'm trying to make the game better everywhere if I can with what I have. And so that's all I'm like I said, all I'm trying to do is share what we're doing and the results we're getting from what we're doing, and hoping that it can help somebody else somewhere. More specifically, I think the people that I can help are new coaches getting into the game. That if I can help the future, then I'm doing my job. And so so whether or not anybody around here takes it and uses it is irrelevant to me. Maybe there's a guy in Ohio who likes it, right? Or a coach in California or a coach in New York or somebody like that. If they look at it and go, hey, I'm going to try that and I'm going to give it a real go, right? And it works for them, then I've helped progress U.S. soccer in some way in another place. And that's really all I'm trying to do. I don't get paid for any of that. So for helping out or any of these other things. And I try to be as open as I can with everybody and honest as I can with everybody. And so that's all I'm trying to do is help the next generation. And if I can raise the level just a little bit, and then it's that rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. And so that's all I'm looking to do with the social media and the sharing and whatnot. I could shut down all of my accounts tomorrow and it wouldn't change the way I'm doing anything on the field. But yeah, that's all I'm doing with the social media stuff.
One of the other things I wanted to ask about is you talked about meeting your wife. You've had some kids. What has she been like? Well, how does she work into the puzzle of Mike's obsession with developing youth soccer players in terms of support, and how does she fit into the whole mix?
Yeah, you take this back to the military. The hardest job in the military is the military spouse, right? And I find that very similar to coaching, because the ones who are really into it, like truly obsessed, like me, like I come home from training at 8:00 at night, 8:30 at night, and then I come into my office and I work more on it, right? And it's fresh in my head, and I'm writing down my notes, and I'm trying to tweak it to be better every single time, and then during the day, I'm planning training sessions. I'm planning my coaches trainings and how I'm going to interact with players and coaches, and what's the next level. And I mean, middle of the day call, I call people in the middle of the day, other coaches, and go, hey, let me run this by you real quick. What do you think of this? Right. And then we talk for like an hour, and my wife is so amazing to put up with that. Right. She's incredible and she doesn't come from like a family that was like that, right? Athletically into sports and whatnot. She's Canadian. And so, I mean, she had a brother, I think, that played a little hockey, but the obsession with what I do and my job is crazy. And then when it takes me to Dallas or Austin or San Antonio, and I gotta, spend a weekend there, or if there's a tournament, a week-long tournament, I got to go somewhere, and she's stuck here with the kids by herself, right? She's amazing for that, and she's grown into it over time and kind of gotten used to it and gotten adjusted to it. So, but it's important to have that kind of support in my house. It helps that my kids played too, because she's been able to come out and see the environment and be involved in the environment when she's taking my daughter to practice and bringing her home and going to games and tournaments and things like that. And so it's helped her, acclimate to the craziness of my world. Yeah, she's phenomenal, and I couldn't, I'm better with her here. So it's amazing.
Last question I want to ask about is, when I look back at, I look up SG1 and I see the beard wasn't on the picture on the website. Is there a story with the beard? It's kind of like when people see you, that's kind of that first thing that people are, oh, he's the coach with the bright silver grayish beard.
Yeah. It's funny because I started growing the beard 5 years ago, right? And it's been a wide variety of lengths, in between. But my wife likes it. I could shave it off and it wouldn't matter to me. But now it's taken on an identity, right? It's I couldn't cut it because I cut it 2.5 years ago. I cut it 2.5 years ago. And it was as long as this almost. It was almost this long. And I just completely went to the skin. Right. And it grows about 1/2 inch a month almost. Right. That's how fast it grows. I've been keeping it this length because otherwise it'd be down to my stomach. And it was funny. I just got a spur up my rear end one day, and I just shaved it all off, right? And it was the middle of a school day, and I went to pick my daughter up at school. In the normal, she didn't recognize me. She had no idea where I was. She didn't think I was there, and I had to be like, Harper, I'm over here, right? She was looking around, standing next to me. She was looking for me, and because I looked like a completely different person without it, and so it was it's quite funny, but I'm enjoying it. And now my wife loves it. She says it makes me look rugged. And so I think like I'm about to join ZZ Top, or I look like I'm one of them dudes from duck hunting. Was that Duck Dynasty, Duck Hunters guys?
Yes.
Yeah. So but I like it. Everybody kind of, I can go anywhere right now. Dallas, Austin, and people who follow me on Twitter will recognize me wherever I go. I went to Dallas not that long ago. It was May for the Next Gen tournament, and people who follow me who I'd never seen before, just coming up to me and going, "Coach Mike, I follow you on Twitter, and I want to." And I'm like, "Wow, okay, cool. I guess I got to leave the beard because if I shave it off, nobody will recognize me." So.
This chat has been awesome, Mike, and I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. This is Kieran with Coach's Corner Chats with Mike Carroll, and I'm out. Peace.